let's turn to Samson Itodo, the Executive Director of the Youth Initiative for Advocacy, Growth and Advancement, Yiaga Africa. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight.
Always a delight, but that's not the name of the organization.
Oh.
It's just Yiaga Africa, and not Youth Initiative. For
okay, great.
Right.
Thanks for that
Yiaga is
clarification.
Yiaga. It's not
yes,
pseudonym.
yes.
All right, great. Good to know that. Inec, let's talk about Inec. Did Inec miss an opportunity to inspire confidence in the voters with the way it carried out or executed the election on November 6th? Does it have the opportunity to redeem itself tomorrow?
Well, Inec does have an opportunity to redeem itself tomorrow. And there are three fundamental issues. One is with respect to logistics. The logistics arrangement for this November 6th was very poor. And in Yiaga Africa's preliminary statement, we did state the fact that as at 7:30 a.m. on Saturday, only 17% of polling units recorded early arrival. That's unacceptable. This commission has conducted several off-cycle elections, and we've seen improvements in the deployment and early commencement. But to have an election of this nature, quite important election where we record this level of late commencement, is unacceptable, and it falls below standards, and we must put that clear. And Yiaga Africa's position is that the logistics for the November 6th election was very poor. The other issues around the technology, and in our statement, we've called on Inec to not only audit, but to ensure that for tomorrow's supplementary elections, we don't want incidences where voters show up at the polling station and the BVAS malfunctions and it's not fixed. Because our data, as we released today in our press conference, shows that in the November 6th elections, there are some polling officials that resorted to manual accreditation, which is a direct contravention of INEC's guidelines and regulations for the election. And there were also polling units where the BVAS malfunctioned and INEC didn't fix them. Now, these kinds of shortcomings, procedural shortcomings, can negatively impact on the outcome of the elections. And the third critical point for the supplementary election is around the fact that the security agencies have a fundamental role to play in tomorrow's elections. INEC has moved the time, has reviewed the time from 10 to 4 p.m. Yeah. We do hope that the security agencies will provide the security that INEC requires to deploy, because in Saturday's election, INEC claims that it couldn't deploy for several reasons, like community resistance or the unavailability of security agencies. Yes. I do hope that for tomorrow's elections, there will be security provided for INEC to deploy in Ihala, as well as ensure that they secure the materials. Because in the pre-election period, Ihala was one of the flashpoints of violence that Yiaga Africa did identify, because there have been pockets of violence in the build-up to the elections. And so we expect that the security agencies will deploy massively in strategic locations, not to undermine the process, but to safeguard the process, because the higher the levels of security, the higher the integrity quotient of the supplementary elections.
All right, well, I'm going to basically ask you, your recommendations to INEC to prosecute staff and security operatives who you claim undermine the elections. Do you intend to follow these to the end? And she just asked you about INEC, but I would just add there your overall evaluation of the process on Saturday, INEC side, party side, the voter side.
Well, let me state pronto that we didn't claim. We followed the collation. I'm sure you followed the collation, where the returning officer for Orumba North, alleged that the EO was compromised. She was forced, to she conspired with police officers to force the returning officer to do what? To declare, to falsify results and make a declaration under duress. At some point, her testimony was to the effect that she was even tear gassed. So we are not the ones claiming it. The returning officer made that allegation. And if you recall in yesterday's collation, that Orumba North, the returning officer had to spend some time to try to address the issue. But they were also compelled and conscripted by the provisions of the law. Because once a declaration is made by virtue of Section 68 of the Electoral Act, only the tribunal and a court can vitiate or nullify a particular declaration. And so that result had to be admitted. And so we expect that both Inec will investigate this case and prosecute and sanction the electoral officer. We expect that the police would also investigate the role that the police officer has also played. But above all, the National Assembly has a fundamental role to play to fast-track the amendment process and transmit the bill to the president to assent. Because if the National Assembly had passed the Electoral Act and the president has signed it into law, INEC the returning officer wouldn't have admitted that result, because the new electoral law, though in inchoate status, grants INEC the power to review election results where those declarations have been made under controversial circumstances or where it's in violation of the guidelines provided by INEC.
What do you envisage in 1 minute? It would be the final outcome of this election. Is it likely to be determined by the courts from what you are seeing so far? Will it even run into some kind of, what's that election again?
Inconclusive?
No, not inconclusive, but I'll get the word right. Is it going to end with the courts deciding?
My expectation,
with the numbers we're seeing. And was INEC even right to rely 100% on this BVAS device?
Well, INEC was test running. This is the first time it's deploying the BVAS on a large-scale election of this nature. I hope that they aggregate all the lessons ahead of subsequent elections, because technology always has its vulnerabilities. And so even your phones also have their challenges. So they need to improve on the technology. But on the point about, whether this will end up in court, judicial review is a cornerstone of democracy. The actors in this particular race have a right, to seek legal redress. And we must encourage them that they are not mobilizing their supporters to hit the streets and take to violence, but they take to civil and legal means. But our PVT data verified the results INEC declared so far, that the results declared from the 21 local governments fall within Yiaga Africa's PVT margin of error, which means that the results are a reflection of the ballot cast. And so we wait for tomorrow, once the whole process is concluded. At the end of the day, it is the Anambra people. Unfortunately, is a small fraction of the Anambra people who are making that determination, which is sad.
All right, Sam Itodo, Executive Director, Yiaga. Thank you for being on News Night.
Always a delight. Thank you.
Good.